VikesNow, I am Dustin Baker. The Vikings take on the Packers at Lambeau Field in 5 days. The Vikings are 3-0. The Packers are 2-1. We're pretty darn sure that Sam Darnold will play for the Vikings. He avoided a major injury. What was it, a knee bruise yesterday? That was what the MRI showed. Glorious news, in fact. This train can keep humming for the Vikings. On the Packers side of the operations, I think they'll probably have Jordan Love back. That's usually the way Vikings football goes. Is like the other team gets like the good news, and that's fine. I think the Vikings are taking on all comers at this point. Otherwise, they'd be playing Malik Willis, who's looked pretty darn good for the last 2 weeks. But the top question I have been asked since the Vikings beat the Giants by 22 points in week 1 is, are these Vikings for real? What is even going on? How can this be? And so I decided I want to do this show for 15 minutes or so about why these Vikings are contenders. Now, I'll caveat by saying this. We probably need about a month more prosperity to daydream about Super Bowl contendership. But in terms of being bona fide playoff contenders that can tunnel deep into the postseason, it's safe to say we're there, and I'm going to take this episode to explain why. Believe it or not, it's not just rah-rah, yay, go Vikings, homerism. There is a lot of substantiation to the numbers as to why this is a really good football team, and a lot of us didn't see it coming. So let's jump into that. The top parallel I get asked about is the 2016 team when they started 5-0. And I think they were atop a couple batches of power rankings back then. Why wouldn't they be at 5-0? Then the bye week happened, which coincidentally, it's the exact same thing this year. In theory, the Vikings could be 5-0, go to a bye week, and then we'll see what happens. But I will tell you that this team is different from the 2016 team for one primary reason. The 2016 team was getting away with it. They weren't rushing the ball. In fact, they were the worst Vikings rushing team in Vikings history. I think they averaged 3.2 yards per carry. And the 2016 team was often propped up by, you'll recall, early in the season, defensive touchdowns. I think there were 1 or 2 against the Titans in week 1. And then that was the year where they had a lot of sweet kick returns and punt returns, or more than normal, I should say. In fact, I think it was the last time the Vikings returned a punt return for a touchdown was 2016. This Vikings team is not getting away with it. They're stomping on some good teams and then taking care of business against ones like the Giants. So although we were all excited about the 2016 team, there was always this like cliff that kind of felt imminent because you could that was the year that Adrian Peterson hurt his meniscus. They turned to Jerick McKinnon and Matt Asiata on the ground, and there was no rushing game for the 2016 Vikings, and there is right now. So I don't foresee some big-ass losing streak like the 2016 team. Before you blinked, they were 5-5 and eventually finished 8-8. So I will dispel anything that has to do with the 2016 team because it's just not as well. That team was not as well-rounded as this one is. So that is the first comparison. I want to go through a bunch of rankings that kind of explain where this team is at through 3 games. So in the red zone, the Vikings ranked 7th right now on offense in scoring touchdowns when they get within the other team's 20-yard line. And on defense, they ranked 10th on stiffening inside their own 20-yard line when the other team gets down there. And why is this important? Is because this metric wasn't like this last year. They were pretty darn good in 2022. That's what kept that team afloat to the tune of 13-4. But when you get down to that precious area of the field, you have to be able, if you want to be a good team that's taken seriously, you have to score touchdowns, not field goals, or turn the ball over, or do something dumb where you scored 0 points. So right now, out of all 32 teams in the red zone, the Vikings are scoring touchdowns to the 7th highest clip in the sport. And that usually is an indicator that you have a pretty damn good offensive play caller and, checks notes. For now, that's Kevin O'Connell who's calling the plays. And it's a little bit different change of pace from the multiple offensive coordinators that Mike Zimmer had. In Mike Zimmer's defense, his teams are actually pretty darn good in the red zone on offense as well. But right now, the Vikings are a top 7 team when it comes to red zone efficiency. And that's one of the reasons why it feels each of these 3 games, you can feel like, wow, this team is good, or there is efficiency that's on display, is because they're not squandering opportunities when they get down, close to the goal line. So on both sides of the ball, you have that ability to score touchdowns and the ability to prevent the other team from getting 6 when they get down inside the 20. So red zone right off the bat. Third down efficiency. That one is humongous. And during the Kirk Cousins brand of Vikings, there were years where this ranked in the 20s. Right now, on offense, the Vikings rank 3rd in the NFL in third down efficiency, and then on defense, 10th. So on both sides, just like red zone, when it gets down to crunch time, most coaches will tell you, third down is the money down. The Vikings are doing it on offense at an unbelievable clip. I don't know how Sam Darnold is finally doing this just with the Vikings, but we'll take it. I mean, I do know it's the coaching and the scenery, the weaponry that he has, and the just natural maturation that he's had. Is he 27 now? And then on defense, it's no surprise. Even during the Zimmer days, we saw remarkable third down defense. In fact, the 2017, that was their calling card. The reason the 2017 defense was so damn good, and this one feels like it's approaching that defense. By the numbers of the Vikings EPA per play, the Vikings defense right now through 3 weeks is better than the 2017 defense finished. But on third down, the Vikings were absolutely wonderful in 2017, and they're getting there this year, ranked at number 10. So you have 2 very vital metrics that are indicator of a good football team, the red zone and third down. There's also... This is new. This is brand new to the Vikings under Kevin O'Connell. There's also the element of balance on offense. So pull up any game or any past season with O'Connell 2022 or 2023, and you will see this fat-ass discrepancy between passing the ball and running the football. If you watch this show for any longer than 2 months or so, this is one of the things that I've pounded home. What I often say is that Kevin O'Connell's offense will never fully cook if they can't run the football. It doesn't matter how good the defense is. It doesn't matter how good Kirk Cousins, Sam Darnold, Nick Mullins, J.J. McCarthy, how well they throw the ball. If you are throwing it 67, 68, 70% of the time, your offense is one-dimensional, and it's going to get figured out. Well, right now, unbelievably, the Vikings, unbelievably because it's the Kevin O'Connell team, the Vikings ranked 19th in pass percentage play call, per pass play call percentage, and 14th. So they're running the football, per NFL rankings more than they are passing. I think the actual percentages is they're throwing it slightly more per play call, but this is a passing league in the NFL, and this is glorious. This is what you want the Vikings to be. When you have a former quarterback as your head coach, there's always this temptation or tendency to wind up and throw it when in doubt, and that's what O'Connell has done up until this season. So you can thank foremost Aaron Jones, secondarily Ty Chandler, who's getting about 35% of rushing attempts, for the balance on offense, because they're able to. Aaron Jones getting 6 yards every time he touches the ball, whether it is a rushing attempt or a passing target, and that keeps everybody on the other team honest, so that you can throw the ball when you decide to. You're being kept in check because Aaron Jones is that threat to get 6 yards every time he touches the ball. The Vikings ranked 12th in rushing DVOA in 2022 and 2023. Separate seasons, they ranked 27th. So it feels like our wish has been granted. You want to see what the Kevin O'Connell offense can do if you have a competent running back. They got that, albeit the guy will be 30 here in a couple months. For now, the balance is there, and for the first time in the Kevin O'Connell era, we can say that. They went 13-4 somehow by not running the ball too frequently. It was propped up by Dalvin Cook's home run touchdowns at times. But you could see the writing on the wall in 2022 that Dalvin Cook wasn't the same running back. And then in 2023, we had the Alexander Madison experiment that did not go well. And so the Vikings rested on their laurels and threw the football all the time. They're not doing that anymore because you've got Aaron Jones taking about 65% of rushing attempts, and it's really working. So for the first time in the O'Connell era, the Vikings have balance, and that's what you need if you want to get to the postseason. You can't just step back and throw the ball 70% of the time and think that's going to be sustainable. It never is. It's not a video game. Next, and this was the big problem last year, the single most damning item for the 2023 Vikings, why they went 7-10, why they got off to that shitty start, 0-3, was the turnover margin. And you can feel that in your bones. Every offensive drive, it looked like it was going to start this way this year. Seemed like it felt with a fumble. And C.J. Ham did it against the Giants, but then that was it. Right now, the Vikings rank 6th in turnover margin, so they're not flawless when it comes to giveaways. Sam Darnold had the 2 interceptions. What other tomfoolery was there? There was the Ham fumble. Then there was the Aaron Jones fumble on the goal line that still gets on my nerves. But they're forcing the turnovers right back. And that is extreme vitality if you want to be considered a Super Bowl contender, or in this case, playoff contender. You've got to win the turnover margin. And I shudder to think what these games would look like if the Vikings weren't forcing turnovers. It really is the special sauce right now. And this is the exact opposite of the shows we were doing on September 24th, September 25th last year. We were bemoaning all of the turnovers, the upside-down differential. Bada bing, they were 0-3, and it wasn't until they fixed that turnover split until they got back to 500 before Cousins got hurt. So red zone efficiency is there. Third down efficiency. Both sides of the ball for both of those stats are there. You have balance on offense for the first time in the O'Connell era. Turnover margin is right side up to the tune of 6th best in the NFL. Maybe the most important one, it's not even really a stat, it's just a factoid or a strongly formulated opinion, is there is roster depth. I've been a Vikings fan since 1996. I cannot remember in my lifetime when you have players like Jordan Addison, TJ Hawkinson, Dallas Turner, Ivan Pace, to an extent Dalton Risner and JJ McCarthy, having those guys out due to injury, and we say, who cares? You don't even think about them during the game. Most NFL teams, and the Vikings especially, when you're missing Addison, Hawkinson, on a certain drive, you'll see, oh, God, I wish we would have had Hawkinson there. That would have been prime Hawkinson territory. Or in a game against the Texans, Justin Jefferson hurts his hand or whatever it was. Next man up, Jordan Addison. Nope, he's not playing. For the first time that I can remember, and maybe some of you old-timers from the 70s and whatnot can remember, but I don't remember the roster being quite like this, where next man up actually means something. So what you have is when guys like Ivan Pace goes down, it's like you see the injury report Thursday into Friday. You're like, damn it, no Ivan Pace. That guy is kind of a heartbeat of the defense. Who cares? Was it Camus Grugier Hill comes in, gets the interception right off the bat, and there's no noticeable downgrade somehow. Jalen Naylor is becoming the modern day, all he does is catch touchdowns guy, and he's moving the sticks when called upon. So the roster depth that has been carefully constructed over the last 3 off seasons by general manager Kwesi Adolpho-Mensah is paying off. I don't care that he swung and missed on Lewis Seed and Andrew Booth. That shit happens. It really sucked for him because it was his welcome to the NFL party, his first draft ever. But when you're able, by the way, those guys aren't even playing in Buffalo and Dallas. When you're able to just plug and play, your first round draft pick, Dallas Turner's out. Oh, that's okay. We've got Jihad Ward. The roster depth is there, and it is cooking within this system on offense and defense. So you're at a really advantageous spot with your favorite football team when when guys are out, we just shrug our shoulders. I mean, at 2:30 p.m. Central Time Sunday, when the Vikings were up, 31-7, did you care that Jordan Addison was missing? Ivan Pace, Dallas Turner, TJ Hawkinson, Dalton Wright? Was that crossing your mind? No. The Vikings should have been losing, and what we should have been saying was, 2-1, Packer week, we're going to get Addison back, Turner back, Ivan Pace back, and then we'll see if we can contend. No, they went ahead and just beat the shit out of the Texans without all of their guys. It's unbelievable, the roster depth that this team suddenly has in unison with how well the coaching staff is scheming absolutely everything. So I think probably the most important part of this, if you don't like stats, is the roster is finally deep. And, all summer, I would look at the roster, and I think you guys and gals did too, and the only thing I could find to explain why this team isn't going to be very good was because Sam Darnold needed to prove it. And I didn't believe it would go this well. I think I ended up predicting 3,600 yards, 25 touchdowns, 11 interceptions or something for Darnold. The guy's on pace for 45 touchdowns right now. So wouldn't you know it, his reclamation story is in full motion. Glad that knee thing checked out all right. But the roster depth there is there on the whole to support a 3-0 start and suggest sustainability. And then it just turns into gravy when Dallas Turner comes back, Ivan Pace comes back, TJ Hawkinson. All of these dudes will be set to come back relatively soon, and then we'll see how much higher the Vikings can climb. I also have some intel, I don't know if you read this on Vikings territory yesterday, that TJ Hawkinson probably isn't going to be back right away when he comes off the PUP list or is eligible. I had a couple dudes tell me that I trust that it's more of a later October thing. And if we're 3-0, winning without him, Johnny Munt's catching some decent balls, it's just like I got done saying, like, we'll be okay. On the whole, one of the things that really impresses me the most when you compare the Vikings to 2022, when they were pretty darn good, is that nothing feels accidental about these wins. They're convincing. And in 2022, I don't know that there was a single convincing win that didn't go down to the wire. And that's why when the Vikings lost only a few times in 2022 in the regular season, they got their doors blown off by the Cowboys mainly. The Vikings have beat the Giants, 49ers, and Texans, and they controlled each one of those games. And you shouldn't be able to do that 3 times in a row, let alone against the Super Bowl runner-up 49ers or a Monsters of Rock Texans team, that, got to the AFC divisional round last year and was undefeated coming into this game. And so I keep thinking about how none of this is fluky, which suggests to me that this team is probably pretty darn good. Point differential, that is a really, really good indicator of the best teams in football. I think I said this on Sunday evening in the reaction show. When you get to late in the postseason, I'm talking NFC divisional round, AFC divisional round, and you look back and you pull up the point differential statistics from the regular season, you can usually look around at the landscape of the NFL, and the last team standings are the teams that have the highest point differential. That's because good teams take care of business against shitty ones, or in the Vikings case, everybody. So right now, the Vikings rank 3rd in point differential, which in a nutshell means how many points have you scored, how many points have your opponent scored. And I think the Vikings are plus 55, only trailing the Bills, who smoked the Jaguars. Jaguars in a world of hurt. And then the Saints still flying high after that week 1 shellacking of the Panthers. But the Vikings are right there, 3rd at point differential. A couple more things is the Vikings defense, ranks 1st per DVOA. And it's been a long time since we've been able to say that. I have to go back and check. I don't even know if the 2017 team ranked 1st in DVOA. I know the Jaguars that season and the Vikings played hot potato with a lot of the defensive rankings. But the reason I bring up the defense is I know the Vikings have had good defenses in the past and they haven't resulted in Super Bowls. But if you're looking for hope, sustainable hope in this season, when the defense is playing this well, they're probably not going to finish with a losing record unless they get utterly incompetent on offense, or Sam Darnold gets hurt and then Nick Mullins gets hurt and then we're down to Brett Rippon and some guy they sign. The defense is probably going to keep this team at least 500, even if they start to take a downturn like 2016 or something like that. You can't usually have a top 3, in this case, top 1 NFL defense, and then you look down at the standings on January 3rd, and you're like, boy, how did we get to 4-13? That's usually not how it works. The defense, an underrated facet of any sport, but especially in the NFL during this offensive heyday. The Vikings defense is going to continue its terror, and at the very least, they're probably a 500 team if things start to get ugly for whatever reason on offense. So, paying kudos to Brian Flores and the gang. The only thing I can look at to critique the Vikings is time of possession. That son of a bitch is still way down in the basement. It's because the Vikings are scoring too fast, mainly the 97-yard touchdown bomb to Jefferson. Or that very first drive against the Texans when they got the interception. Vikings ranked 29th per time of possession, and the same spirit when you get to January and you look back at the regular season stats, usually the teams that are in the playoffs have a higher or a good time of possession. Right now, the Vikings are still down in the toilet, and that's because they're scoring too fast. Now, this stat, I really don't care if they fix it because everything else is rocking and rolling. But what I would expect is if these Vikings start to look like a team that's 12-5 or something like that, that time of possession will start to moderate and will come up towards at least the middle of the league, because right now it ranks like 4th worst, which is really weird for an undefeated team. All right, to run down through the show, I don't think this team is like 2016 because the 2016 offense could not run the football. It sucked at that. The red zone efficiency is there on both sides of the ball. 3rd down efficiency is top 10 both sides, top 3 on offense. Finally, the Vikings have balance on offense. The play calling is, the Vikings have a higher ranking running the football, play call percentage than they do passing. Turnover margin is no longer a problem. They rank 6th there. Probably the most important thing of this entire show is the roster depth. Makes it so that next man up means something. When guys like Addison, Hawkinson, Dallas Turner, Ivan Pace are out, we're like, we'll be fine. Shouldn't be able to say that, but you can. Nothing feels accidental at all. There's no like, oh my God, this fluke thing happened and the Vikings are 3-0. Although at this point, we'd probably take that to keep the train going. Point differential, which is a really good indicator of good football teams, is top 3. And the defense is the best in the NFL per DVOA. And usually teams with great defenses don't just slide into the top 10 of the draft for April. All right, that's all I got. We'll be back tomorrow to talk with Josh Fry. In the meantime, Skol, baby.